Analysis. Key Insight 1. Good leaders approach everything with a sense of balance. Leaders are often faced with situations in which they feel pulled between two extremes. The act of finding the right balance between these extremes, which can be understood as sets of opposing forces, is the so-called dichotomy of leadership. Good leaders must find a way to walk the line between the opposing forces of control and delegation. They must claim authority while also empowering subordinates on the team to achieve its goals. Leaders must also find a balance between detail and simplicity, so that they're communicating complex information while keeping it simple enough to transmit clearly. And they need to challenge their team members without making the challenge feel overwhelming or impossible. One element of leadership that causes many leaders to struggle is handing out praise. If team members are praised too highly, they will rest on their laurels. Sometimes resting on laurels happens on an unconscious level. Other times, it's a conscious decision. There will always be situations in which praise is warranted, and morale will wither if it is withheld. One way to deliver praise in a way that will still inspire the team to work hard is to single out a few individuals for admiration for specific deeds. A general sense of satisfaction can be conveyed to the full team, and then a few members in particular can be lauded. This method accomplishes two things. It helps team members identify specific behaviors that are desirable, and it inspires everyone to keep pushing to be better. Another good example of the dichotomy of leadership is cultivating a reputation as a leader who is approachable without becoming overly familiar with team members. Leaders should avoid alienating behaviors that distance them too much from the rest of the team. On-site visits and deep conversations can help close the gap between leaders and their team members. At the same time, a leader must always maintain a sense of professional decorum. Leaders who are overly familiar with their team members may lose credibility in the team's eyes. Key Insight 2. Good leaders use detachment as a tool to gain perspective. Leaders must engage fully in their work without becoming completely absorbed by the details. They must have the vision to hold long-term goals while directing the pursuit of those goals from minute to minute and day to day. It can be difficult to maintain that balance during crises when challenges are immediate and attention-consuming. In times of crisis, chaos, or heated emotions, good leaders force themselves to detach from the situation at hand to regain a more holistic and objective perspective. In a combat situation, for instance, a leader who becomes overwhelmed or confused should step back, literally. Gaining physical distance from the problem helps promote mental clarity and raise situational awareness. By disengaging from the fight, a leader can take a calming breath and reassess the situation. Big picture perspective then helps the leader identify priorities and formulate an adjusted strategy for achieving the mission's objective. The same advice applies to emotional arguments at work or at home. Instead of focusing on formulating their next retort, good leaders impose the emotional distance necessary to think about the bigger picture. They think about the goal of the conversation and how best to achieve it. Good leaders are strategic, but not overly attached to a single strategy. People have a natural fondness for their own ideas, but leaders who are too proud of their own ideas run the risk of ignoring other suggestions that are objectively better. Good leadership demands an openness to criticism and the possibility that someone else has a better plan. Good leaders give all suggestions the benefit of the doubt, instead of automatically defending their own ideas. An air of detachment helps them make the best possible selection among a range of possible decisions. Key Insight 3. Even the most powerful leaders must remain humble. Humility is an inspiring quality in a leader. Inspiration builds influence, which is the best way to establish and maintain power. Leaders who over-rely on their rank or station may have power, but it's a relatively weak and unstable sort of power. Issuing orders that people only follow out of fear or obligation is not a sustainable strategy. It leads to resentment and ill will. People feel more motivated when they believe their work is meaningful, rather than an empty action performed for an egotistical leader. And they tend to perform best for leaders who have earned, rather than demanded, their respect. One way that leaders can demonstrate humility is by doing jobs that are beneath their rank. Doing menial tasks once in a while demonstrates solidarity, respect, and modesty to subordinates. On-the-job knowledge about different roles on the team is also a matter of practicality. It's important for leaders to understand the work processes, skill sets, and equipment used up and down the chain of command to avoid seeming out of touch. Leaders need to develop a working familiarity with, if not a mastery of, every person's role to inform their big-picture perspective. Humility also entails a willingness to acknowledge personal and professional weaknesses and insecurities. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, but often leaders are reluctant to admit to the latter. Part of effective leadership is the ability to apply objective analytical skills to self-assessment, which is more difficult than criticizing others. The most confident leaders have no problem admitting to gaps in knowledge or other deficiencies. In fact, being able to diagnose such weaknesses makes it easier to compensate for them by loading the team with people who can help make up for the leader's known deficits.